Welcome back to Rich Tuesday. I'm an anthopper, and guess what? You probably are too. We all know the story of the ant and the grasshopper. You know, one prepares, one just enjoys, but then winter comes and the ant wins. Well, with retirement looming for me, this story it gets real. But the truth, it doesn't fit neatly into a fable. People don't live like the ant or the grasshopper. Guess what? They live in between. And when you get to this stage in life, you can feel fall fading fast and winter approaching. And winter has a way of asking a question you can't ignore. Are you the ant or are you the grasshopper? In my case, I did the ant part. You know, I paid myself first. Every paycheck, money into retirement, money into an emergency fund, always. The emergency fund, it was sacred to me. It kept me out of credit card debt my entire life. It was the thing I really preached to my kids about constantly. You know, two buckets, retirement and emergency. And if you get those right, you can survive almost anything. That was my ant side talking, you know, responsible and consistent. But once those buckets were taken care of, something else would show up, the grasshopper. And I didn't fight it. If I saw something I wanted, I didn't overthink it. A Lacoste sweater instead of buying 6 at Kohl's, the Four Seasons in Hawaii instead of a perfectly good Marriott. Looking back, that was me living as an anthopper. The ant handled the future, and the grasshopper made sure the present still felt like something. And there's one decision where the grasshopper and me, I think it got exactly right. I had a ski boat. It wasn't an extravagant one by boat standards, believe me. It was a 19-foot Glastron, not a Mastercraft, not a Nautique. Those are 3 times the price. But I did buy it brand new. It was mine, and I loved it. And more importantly, it gave me something I can't put a price on. 9 summers, May to September, every single year, out on the lake in Texas. No phones, no screens, no distractions, just time, real time with my kids, hundreds of photos, but more than that, hundreds of moments. And if you've ever raised kids in the age of screens, you know how hard it is to get that. That boat gave me something else too, something I didn't even realize I needed at the time. It took away the guilt. You know, the voice that says, you didn't spend enough time with them? Because I did. We did, out there on that lake every summer. Was it expensive? Yeah. Storage, gas, maintenance, insurance, winterization, all that stuff adds up. But I can say this honestly, with almost no hesitation. That was worth every penny, and I'd do it again. That was the grasshopper, getting something exactly right. But not everything lands that way. Cars, for instance. That's where my grasshopper, it just got too comfortable. For the most part, I was reasonable. I bought Volkswagens mostly. Practical, well-built, not really flashy. But I did buy them new, and I bought them a little more often than I really needed to. You know, every 4 or 5 years. I'd start thinking about the next one, you know. Nothing was wrong with the current one. It still ran great. But the grasshopper, it would start whispering to me, it's time. And I'd listen. And then one time I went a little further. I didn't buy the Volkswagen. I bought a BMW. And I remember it clearly because it felt different. It was a little more indulgent. And if I'm being honest, it didn't feel the same. There was something about it at the time, and even now, that didn't sit right. It didn't bring what I thought it would, of course. It was just a more expensive version of the same thing. And that's the one I look back on and I think, yeah, that one I missed. It wasn't a disaster, it was just off. And that is the tricky part about being an anthopper. Because now, standing this close to winter, I find myself asking the question, did I get the balance right? Did the ant do enough? Did the grasshopper take too much? And the honest answer is, I don't know. Some days I look at the numbers, run them again, and I think, what the hell was I doing? And other days I think about the boat and the summers and those moments. And I think, well, I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And that's the real challenge, isn't it? Every decision you make in your life, it's a trade-off between summer now and winter later. And the uncomfortable truth is, you really can't maximize both. And I've known people, for instance, who live the ant version of life, all in, disciplined, careful, relentless savers. And common sense, it tells me that's not quite right either. Because if you spend your whole life preparing to live, there's no guarantee you'll ever switch, that you'll suddenly become a grasshopper at 60. If you were the ant your whole life, you probably stay the ant, even in winter. So what does it feel like now? Honestly, it's not peace or pride. It's more doubt, kind of mixed with regret. And there's a little self-condemnation mixed in there too. And I know it's not completely fair. I argue with myself about it all the time because I don't think it's fair. I think it's just human. I don't think there's any version of life where I would escape feeling that way, really. Because even if I'd lean more towards the ant, I'd probably just be sitting here wondering, what did I miss? Did I spend my whole life saving instead of living? So maybe the lesson isn't about getting it right, because there is no right, is there? There's just the life you chose and the one you didn't. And the truth is, you don't get to live both, do you? So you don't get to know. And maybe this is just what it feels like to be an anthopper, standing in the winter, looking back and wondering. If this resonated with you, please subscribe. I'll be back in plenty more videos. See you in the next one.